Frank Klose covers the Phillies for 97.3 ESPN.com. Phillies lineup is out, and it hasn't changed. We bring Frank in to talk a little Fightins as we get ready for a weekend set with the Twins. Frank, how you feeling, man? I know you were a little under the weather on Tuesday.
A little bit under the weather still, and this weather doesn't help, but it's okay. I'm powering through.
Well, we got rain in the forecast from like now till about June.
Yeah, it sure looks that way. I mean, hopefully tomorrow they'll be able to get some games in if they can't today.
Yeah, and I know that tonight is questionable, but what do you think about are you surprised, do you like the fact that, I like it, by the way, that Gabe Kapler has gone with the same exact lineup every single game so far this year?
Yeah, that's pretty the opposite of what happened last year, and certainly when you have this number of veteran bats that are especially playing so well. I mean, the lineup, even in the one ugly loss that the Phillies had, the lineup has been firing on all cylinders, and they say if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and he has really no reason to change the lineup at all. And I thought for sure that Andrew Knapp would start the day game after the night game, and supposedly Andrew Knapp approached Gabe Kapler, and before Kapler could say anything, JT Realmuto said, "I'm playing tomorrow." So,
wow.
He wanted to play that day game after the night game, and you know what? Just roll with it best you can because, again, they're driving in lots of runs.
Yeah, and I talked about this on Wednesday's show. Like, I thought that they would go with the same lineup again tonight, and then tomorrow might be the first time that you see a little change here. So, tonight, because they had the day off yesterday. So I like the fact because, as you mentioned, even though they lost that game the other day, they still scored 8 runs. So I don't want to tinker with that.
Yeah, you might as well just keep rolling with it. I mean, they're one thing to consider too is that these guys are just learning to work with one another in the lineup, and with all these off days, any opportunity to keep that mojo going is a good thing, I think. And so Gabe Kapler can't do wrong by just sticking with this.
Frank Klose covers the Phillies over the first couple of weeks, first couple of games, I guess you could say, of the season. Anything that has happened lineup-wise, the way he's used the bullpen, that has surprised you from what you thought it might be after spring training?
I think in some respects the pitching, and this applies to starting pitching and the bullpen, I think that they're all a little bit rusty. And, the Phillies seem to go with the plan this spring that they were purposely holding back at least a little bit the guys that they knew were going to make the roster. Like David Robertson, for example, faced fewer hitters than he's ever had in any spring training in his career. And now we see he's a little bit rusty. Somebody who's been so reliable for so long in the major leagues.
Is that all it is, by the way? You think he's just a little, didn't get enough work?
I see that across the board. I mean, even Aaron Nola, he wasn't his self the other day. You look at just the people that have kind of faltered a little bit, or even in victory, even Jake Arrieta was a little wild. And I can see that having something to do with the workout routine they had. It's not the same when you're not facing major league hitters as they normally would have done much more. And they said in spring, we're going to play a lot of these younger guys that can help us down the line, the Cole Urbans, the Eniel De Los Santos, the Ranger Suarez, the Drew Andersons. And in doing that, it kind of was at the expense of the people that were going to make the roster. Now, it's something to be said that, well, these guys are going to make the roster. There's nothing we need to find out. But does that really, if you send them over to the minor league complex, for example, to throw to some hitters, is that really the same thing as live game action against major leaguers? And maybe it's not, and maybe this is a lesson that they're learning right now.
Frank Klose looking at the Phils as they get a weekend series going with the Twins. Same lineup tonight as it's been all the way through. How and when, if at all, I mean, I don't know, does Franco say, is he the everyday third baseman, or is there some plan of how they want to work in Scott Kingery? Do they have to rethink it now because of the way Franco's going? I mean, if he keeps going like this, how do you platoon or tinker with that?
Yeah, that's the one downside. I still think, I still believe to this day that Scott Kingery will replace Cesar Hernandez after this season. But I think if you're the Phillies, you kind of want to run this success as long as you possibly can, and then wait for the natural opportunities to put somebody else in. I mean, I think you really want your starters to be your starters, especially with all these off days that are coming up, that they've had, and certainly if there's a rain out today. They're not going to start all these guys tomorrow in both games. So I think you just kind of wait for those types of things to happen before you really feel like you're forced to. If Scott Kingery is not your starting infielder this year, well, you can't really just kind of force him in because you hope he will be later. And I realize that you might worry about his development, but the Phillies are a team that's supposed to win right now. You know, if this was last season and they're not supposed to win, well, then maybe you mix things up a little bit more. Now you're going for the victory every single night because you want to be at the end of September and find yourself in the playoffs. So I think you just got to go with your starters. And I realize that does kind of put him behind the eight ball, so to speak. But you know what? Rainouts, if somebody gets banged up a little bit one day, those are the types of opportunities that are going to be the ones that we see as Scott Kingery in this situation.
Yeah. Now, do you think that the beginning plan was to have him kind of play mostly third, or now that Franco has played so well, do they kind of because Hernandez is a switch hitter? But you can almost go with Kingery as the right-handed guy and let Hernandez just focus more on hitting left-handed.
You could, but I mean, Hernandez is still a decent player, and I think the Hernandez right now is better than what Scott Kingery would probably give you this season anyway. So again, if you're trying to win every day, I think the lineup's better if Hernandez is there because let's face it, in this Major League Baseball of 2019, the pitchers are going to be switching in and out. So you're only talking about the first couple of bats in some cases that you might face the opposing pitcher, especially at the bottom of the lineup. How often does a starting pitcher pitch past the fifth inning anymore? So those matchups are only good for a couple of bats, and things are going to change, and then you need the pinch hitters. So he's going to have to learn how to be a good pinch hitter, I think, on this particular team.
All right, there's a lot of Phillies we can get into here, including what happens, in center field. You've got the situation. I mean, Herrera's been playing pretty well, right? I mean, it's not like Herrera has been much of an option, but you've got a situation where you might have. Oh man, I'm blanking on who's the center fielder. The Roman Quinn. His name was on the tip of my tongue, and then I lost it. Now it's back. Roman Quinn. Roman Quinn could be getting closer to getting ready to play. Does that throw a wrench into some things? And whose roster spot would be in jeopardy if they bring him up?
This is going to be a tough one. I mean, the Phillies are basically going to be faced with an either or. That's going to be they send Nick Williams to AAA so that they can keep everybody that they have, or they're going to have to designate Aaron Altair for assignments. Chances are Aaron Altair is not going to get through waivers. I think another team would pick him up and love to have him. And then the tricky part with that is if Roman Quinn gets hurt again, as he has been prone to do, then you've kind of lost your backup center fielder. Aaron Altair can play center field very capably. We've already seen even though Andrew McCutchen played a little bit in spring, Scott Kingery played a little in spring, Nick Williams played a little bit in spring, Bryce Harper played there last year. Despite all of that, none of them are really considered center field options. So the hard part is going to be, do we cut somebody like Aaron Altair loose and just kind of hope that Roman Quinn stays healthy, or you have to make some other sort of difficult decision, which is say, all right, Nick Williams, we realize, you're not playing a lot. You can go to AAA, play every day. I think that's some small consolation to not being part of this particular roster at this particular time. And, Nick Williams had that pinch hit single the other day. So, he's not getting the opportunity. So from what I've seen, Matt Farina, the Philadelphia Inquirer, has said that the more likely scenario is that Aaron Altair will be designated for assignment. And that's a shame because I had high hopes for him as a player, and I thought that he was going to perform better than he did last year. But after last year, maybe he's the guy that has to at least try to slip through waivers. I don't think he's going to get through waivers, but you never know. You could surprise somebody. There's enough teams out there that have the need for outfielders that could use Altair. I could see like a Cleveland Indians grabbing him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because you got Williams a lefty, so he becomes you got Altair's a lefty and Williams a righty off the bench. Then you got McCutchen who's a righty, you got Herrera who's a lefty, and you got Harper who's a lefty. So you would almost wonder if having that extra right-handed bat with Altair, but if you bring in I guess if you're bringing Quinn back, that kind of, you're choosing between Altair and Quinn because you're going to keep Williams. But then any one of those guys have trade value.
I'm sure if the Phillies are going to get to the point where they're going to cut somebody, they'll call around, and chances are if they have to, they probably would be able to get something, basically a name only back if they were looking for somebody to take one of those players off their hands, but it probably would not be anything significant at all. And Williams probably had the more value in terms of trade, and he still may have some, but he's not the type of player that you can just kind of dump at this time of the year. The challenge is if you're trying to get value back, most teams have their rosters set. It's more likely that Nick Williams would go into a trade in July where they're looking for perhaps a long-term piece. If he shows that he can play pretty well this year, he might go in a trade like that. But if you're just calling teams right now and they know you're about to cut somebody, you're not going to get a lot of value. So that's the really hard part of this. And what they might have to do is take a flyer on a guy who's in low A at this point and hope that he works out. But you're probably not going to get anything back for him if you're able to work a trade. So, and usually that could happen after a player is designated for an assignment. So maybe they designate Altair for assignment, and then they have that 10-day window to try to work out a trade with somebody. I can see somebody saying, "Yeah, we'll throw something your way, minor, and we'll take a chance on them," and that might be what happens.
Talking with Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com, covers the Phillies, getting ready for a weekend set. Before we get to some other Philly stuff, real quick, I want to wish a happy belated birthday to Brooklyn Ellie Sealer, and congrats to Matt and Natalie and her brothers Maddox and Jordan as they welcome her home. They just had a baby the other day, so I want to give them a happy belated birthday. I know that they're in the car now, and Frank is talking Phillies to keep them on the road here. The Phillies 4-1. So, as they come back home here, Frank, they just were down in Washington. I want you to kind of wax poetically here about the impact so far of Harper, both on and off the field, because I was saying I don't know if the team was 4-1 with Segura and McCutchen and Real Muto and no Harper, that you would be getting the demand for tickets and the people traveling to Washington that you may have got with Bryce Harper.
That is very fair to say, and I actually don't think it'd be even like this if the Phillies ended up with Manny Machado either. I mean, Harper's got the personality, the way he interacts with fans. When there's a microphone in front of him, he always seems to say the right thing. He knows what buttons to push, whether it's coming out to bat to the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song or wearing Fanatic cleats. He seems to know how to interact with fans and really play up this relationship. And he is very charismatic in that respect, and I think fans are definitely flocking out to see Bryce Harper play, and just the fact that this narrative, if the Phillies were not in Washington the last couple of days, if they had a 2-game series and I don't know, Cleveland, I mean, I can't envision anything being that level of excitement. So, having somebody come from your NL East rival is something which is definitely going to excite the fan base and add an extra storyline, actually several storylines, right? So, him facing the seemingly dominant every year Max Scherzer, and even though he strikes out a couple times, comes back to get on base 8 times in a row against the Nationals after the Nationals tweet something stupid. But did you notice that the Nationals official Twitter account tweets "Yo home, smell you later" when Bryce Harper strikes out, and he sure showed them by getting on base 8 times in a row against them. So there are so many extra narratives that just make this a heck of a lot more fun for Phillies fans, and I can't see this happening with any other type of player. And a lot of it's just because he's 2.5 hours down the road for all these years, and fans got to know him very, very well. And here he is, and it's a great way to sort of play off a rivalry.
Yeah, and I mean, I think for me, and I talked about this the other day, I mean, to me, this was great for baseball. I mean, that baseball now has a guy, and it seems that an April 2nd game, the MLB Network has Bob Costas and John Smoltz and Verducci doing the game. I mean, they are they are prospering from him being a member of the Phillies. Because quite frankly, and maybe I'm wrong, say if I sound biased by saying this, I don't know that they get the attention if Bryce Harper plays for the San Francisco Giants. They certainly didn't get it when he played for the Nationals. I mean, that's just such a stiff. There's such a stiff crowd. This is a place that kind of makes him out to be, almost like a rock star.
It's true, and because he's kind of the last piece, the Phillies added so many other pieces ahead of him. It's like this Phillies team was ready to win if they could get one more guy, and he is sort of that icing on the cake, and it really transformed the Phillies from a team that was really they weren't in the basement last year, but after that collapse, it sure felt that way, into legitimate contenders. And if Bryce Harper is on the San Francisco Giants right now, how are they doing? I mean, they were more than a player away. The San Francisco Giants are the 2014 Phillies. I mean, there's no immediate hope. There's no farm system. So he's just one player that, if he's on that lineup, in San Francisco, what do? They just walk him and then off to the next guy, I mean, so really this is like the one place where you can put him into the lineup, and there's all these guys around him that it's going to really sort of cap off that tremendous offseason that's going to have this lineup, which is proving to be one of the deepest lineups in the whole National League. That'll get you national attention, and one thing that's worth noting too is this nature of free agency is changing so dramatically. This might be the last big name signing for when a player exits a team like this for a while, because you look around the league, it started kind of even before Mike Trout, but Trout re-signs, and then you see Chris Sale, and then you see Alex Bergman. I could go on and on. There's so many names to talk about that have just signed extensions with the teams that they're with. That free agency, that Paul Goldschmidt, for example, next year was going to be a big free agent year, and now it's not. And so, really, just the fact that somebody moves from one team to another is a superstar. It's not going to happen very often. The only time it's going to happen is kind of what happened to the Nationals, is where you build up your payroll so high that the only recourse moving forward is to shed a big star, and that's not going to happen very often. So I think even nationally they realize that this is a storyline that's not going to repeat itself in the near future, and they're certainly all in on that.
How about this bullpen? Tommy Hunter shut down for the next couple of weeks. He's missed all of spring training. He got the rich plasma injection, so he's going to be missing more time. Bullpen, if there's a spot that concerns you, is that it? And losing Hunter for more time, so it obviously looks like, because they're playing, you had David Robertson, you had Sir Anthony Dominguez, you had Tommy Hunter, you had Neshek. They could mix and match those four guys, but losing one of those guys could be a problem.
Adding Juan Nicasio in, I think, is a very helpful piece. I know Nicasio did not do well last year with the Seattle Mariners, if you look at his ERA, but if you look at what they call his FIP, the fielding independent pitching, meaning if he had standard fielding behind him, his ERA would have been less than half of what it ended up being. So, and remember, the Phillies had him before, and they liked him, and they did take advantage of an opportunity to kind of flip him, as they did that year as they were looking to add prospects. But I think he will help make up the loss. Jose Alvarez had a really good season for the Angels. He got roughed up a little bit so far this season with the Phillies, but they've added him so that Adam Morgan actually has some help that has some major league experience. And so, and Hector Neris, yeah, he did give up a couple runs early, but he looked good in subsequent outings. So I think they're deeper than they were, that they can withstand a Hunter injury for now, and that's a good thing. And even at AAA, they still have some depth. Edebray Ramos was the lucky roster recipient of Hunter being injured, and down at AAA they still have Victor Arano and Yaxel Rios, or any of those starters we mentioned that the Phillies think will help them. The Angel de los Santoses of the world could find themselves working towards a bullpen spot for later. So the bullpen doesn't worry me so much. What I would like to see is some consistency out of Sir Anthony Dominguez. I think that I did notice that his velocity was down just a little bit on Wednesday as they lost that game, and he gave up a couple runs. So that's something worth monitoring if it's a long-term problem. But yeah, I think the bullpen can withstand losing Hunter. but I think we still need to see everybody sort of get comfortable in their roles. And again, if some of them didn't work enough, a lot of the veterans in particular. I mean, Nishak didn't work a lot this spring, but he's come out and pitched very, very well. In those first 3 wins, he pitched in all 3 of them. So they do still have a lot of good options. Hunter is something that they can withstand, but let's keep an eye on Dominguez's velocity and see if David Robertson can find his groove. I think he will. I mean, maybe he's been around. He was close enough to Philly and New York that fans will know. Because I'm more worried that David Robertson gets the Carlos Santana approach from fans, where Santana struggled in April and then he could never do any right for the team. But Robertson will come out of this funk, I believe.
Yeah, let's hope. What about Dominguez? He had a rough outing the other night.
Yeah, so just keep an eye on that velocity. If that velocity does dip, I think that he's got to watch it, because a lot of his success came from that high velocity. So I'll be looking at the radar gun in his subsequent outings just to see kind of his fastball where he's topping out, because I think it was 97 on Wednesday, and previously he was up at 99. So there's a couple of mile hours difference. Makes a big difference if you're the guy that relies on people swinging and missing at your stuff.
Frank Klose under the weather, but battling it out right now. By the way, the Bryce Harper over the last 4 games, 8 for 13, 2 doubles, 3 homers, 5 ribbies, and 6 walks. That's not bad, man. They're getting what they paid for so far.
Yeah, he has a 500 batting average, and I think it's a 1.810 OPS. So probably not going to sustain those numbers, but kind of what I was just saying about Robertson. It's good that he gets off to that great start, because the times that he has where he dips a little bit, or he's walking instead of getting hits because they're afraid to throw at him. I think Finn should be ready for that, but certainly the impact of that bat has made to the lineup is tremendous.
All right, Phillies Twins. We'll see if they can get it in, and if not, Eichhoff, right, tomorrow? Is that the plan?
Yeah,
double dip.
Yeah, Jared Eichhoff was supposed to start the Iron Pigs opener last night, and so what they did was they just skipped him because he can join the Phillies in a doubleheader as a 26th man. So, and then the Phillies can keep their rotation going forward straight. So they made that accommodation just in case. There's nothing wrong with Eichhoff skipping him for that start. So, but maybe they'll get it in. I mean, in Philadelphia right now, it's lightly raining. Of course, it's like 42 degrees and not ideal baseball conditions, but we'll see. I mean, the fact that we haven't heard anything by now. I mean, Lehigh Valley did already postpone their game. They haven't postponed the Phillies game yet, so it makes me think that they're going to try. But we'll see. Minnesota doesn't come back. That's the hard thing about a series like these.
All right, Frank will be back on Tuesday with the mailbag. Get your questions in for Frank at Frank Klose with a K, and that weekly Phillies mailbag is on Tuesday's show. Thank you, pal.
Thanks, Mike.